It's a pleasure to speak in this debate, and I congratulate the Honourable Member for North Somerset on all of the work that he has done. And I see Team Freddie and a number of friends are up in the gallery supporting as well. This bill means a lot to thousands and thousands of campaigners, 47,000 people with Down syndrome around the country and their families. I give particular credit to the families from Stroud and Gloucestershire who have reached out to me to express their delight that this is being tabled and also explaining their experiences and why it is important. It's actually a spectacular use of a private member's bill, if I may say so. And I'm also thrilled that the Right Honourable Member for Chichester is at the dispatch box. We've discussed Down syndrome for many, many years because we have the blessings of both having nephews with Down syndrome. So those boys give us great joy, particularly as a distraction from this mad job. So the bill, just to give a slight overview, it's the first time that there will be a duty on the Secretary of State to give guidance on housing, education, youth offending and on national health authorities. It also carries a similar duty on the relevant authorities, which I think is very important. The guidance will set out steps required to meet the needs of people with Down syndrome, and I sincerely believe it will be the start, and it is the start of many other areas of policy and work to undo some of the problems that people with Down syndrome face in their daily lives. So my nephew Rhys is now 19 years old. He is the light of every room he enters. He works for the Thames Valley Cleaning Company at the Select Car Leasing Stadium for Reading Royals, and he is royally very not impressed with me. I am not cool, particularly when I'm in a suit on the telly, so I'm hoping he's not watching. But my part of Rhys's story is that my sister Alice, and I'm sorry if I get upset, so I stood, this isn't just because I'm pregnant, I stood up and tried to talk about Rhys once in Camden Council many years ago and cried then as well, so this may be a struggle. I will give way, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm giving my colleague a brief respite because I know that she's a massive fan of my honourable friend's bill, and I look forward to hearing further words from her at this point.
I appreciate it. I'm blessed by great colleagues in this chamber. So Alice fell pregnant aged 15 years old. Because she was so young, Madam Deputy Speaker, we have no Down syndrome in our family, and there is this common belief that it is only mothers, older mothers, geriatric mothers, as they are often referred to in maternity terms, that they are the ones that have Down syndrome children. Alice was not offered any advice. She didn't have any discussions about Down syndrome. She was also 15 and scared. Her family was not around her. We didn't know about the pregnancy at the early stages, and I doubt that she asked any questions. It was 20 years ago as well, so limited Googling and smartphones. So when Rhys was born, Alice was immediately in love with her baby son, but it was a few days later that my nurse mum spotted signs of Down syndrome. So notwithstanding the absolute love that she felt for her child, it is fair to say that my sister was pretty shocked by what was happening. And remembering that she was still a child herself and all the hopes and dreams that goes into a pregnancy, and I've spoken to other parents since then, with parents of Down syndrome children and parents with other children with disabilities. And I will, thank you.
Thank you. Just on that particular point, I think, does she not agree with me that we need to have a real focus not on the person, just on the person that may have the Down syndrome condition, but also those that bubble around them, the families and those carers and friends and family, because they are much in the conflict with the potential ups and downs of the journey as much as the person with Down syndrome themselves.
I completely agree, because it's actually when I've spoken to other parents that have discovered on birth that they have a child with a disability, the fear and the loss of those hopes and dreams, belief that they would have been taking the child to university and that is now dashed, or taking a child to get married and that's now not going to happen. And with Down syndrome in particular, people believe that the child would die, age about 30. There's such lack of education, particularly when Rhys was born, but I think still now. So I think to think think about the bubble and the whole family, which is what hopefully this bill will do, is incredibly important, because so much of what we think we know is often not true when it comes to disabilities. I will be waiting.
I thank my honourable friend, who's giving an incredibly powerful speech and an account of her own personal experience. And I just wonder, from what she's saying, I know she works with many parents and people with Down syndrome now. Does she think that support for helping new parents come to terms with and understand the condition of their child, does she think that has improved at all since her sister's birth? Or does she believe that we're still quite far off the mark?
I think it's a really important question. I think there have been improvements, and my honourable friend for North Somerset will attest to that. However, there's still that lack of understanding and lack of education. We've got a real issue with people sort of feeling that they need to have terminations when they're told about Down syndrome. There's a big campaign about not screening out children with Down syndrome, because they live very fulfilled lives and bring great joy to so many people. So I think education for all is really important.
I'm very grateful to my honourable friends, and would like to quickly add my words of support for my right honourable friend, the member for North Somerset's bill today. And to go to my honourable friend for Stroud's point on education, is not just education for expectant parents, it's not just education for young people, it's actually education for employers as well. One of the things that shocks me the most is that there are plenty of people who do have Down syndrome that could be, if they wanted to, be in our workforce playing a fulfilling life. And we know that if the benefits of work mean that you have increased life expectancy, as well as better physical and mental health. And Warwickshire County Council did a great scheme where they supported employers to understand how to support not just people with Down syndrome but other learning disabilities and make them an important part of their workforce. And that encouraged lots more people to enter the world of work. And does she agree with me? These are the type of things that we need to be happening so employers understand the full potential of everyone across our United Kingdom.
I completely, I mean, Reece earns £9 an hour. He is far richer than me because he has no outgoings. So, but you know, he enjoys his job. He feels fulfilled by it. I know that schools like Shrubberies in my patch do an awful lot of work to make sure that people go on to be work ready, and our colleges like SGS Stroud. So again, I think that's why the authorities' focus, which this field brings, so government, authorities, everybody, schools, we're thinking slightly differently, and I really welcome that. I think I should be really honest as well and say that I personally did not handle my sister being pregnant very well. I was still a teenager myself. I genuinely thought that her life as a teenage mum was completely over and she wouldn't get to enjoy a lot of the things that I had enjoyed. But I couldn't have been more wrong. I mean, she definitely had a very different life to me in many respects, but I deeply regret my lack of understanding and some of the anger I felt for her on her behalf. It was unjustified and it was wrong, because Reece was the best thing that happened to all of us in our family for so many reasons. But boy, our learning curve has been so steep. I have seen my little sister battle for the understanding for people with Down syndrome. He's going to be friendly again.
So thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. One thing I did want to mention, though, was to make sure that we realise that this affected all communities up and down the country. It wasn't necessarily just specific to a geographical area or a heritage as such. Does my right honourable friend agree that this piece of legislation will be beneficial to all those different communities?
Absolutely, it's so important. And when I reel off this list, if I can get through it, you will understand why it's so important. So I have seen my little sister battle for the understanding about Down syndrome. I've seen her battle for the right to medical care, for operations in a timely fashion. She has battled for education. She has battled for housing. She's battled to get landlords to take people with benefits. She has battled during the transition from Reece being a child to an adult, and she's still at that. She's battled to get the council to complete the required assessment. She's battled with welfare system and DLA appeals. She's battled with endless application forms and then had to redo them because they are lost by various authorities, and had to start all over again. She has battled during COVID, and I know that a lot of families actually battled really fearing for their loved ones with Down syndrome who are vulnerable, often with respiratory issues, and COVID was kind of thrown at all of us. But we found that parents were being ignored, or they certainly felt they were being ignored, and they were not being prioritised for vaccinations. The whole family wasn't being prioritised for vaccinations to protect the people with Down syndrome in their homes.
I will give way. Thank you. I'm extremely grateful, and I think all of us are very moved by what she's had to say. And I think her point in regard to the battles that she has described demonstrate how important it is, I hope she agrees, that as the government develop the guidance, I know my honourable friend, the member of Chichester, will have very much regard to this, involves the experiences and views and opinions, and I suspect recommendations, of those who have Down syndrome or are parents or carers of those or who have supported them, so that they form the best possible guidance that will deliver the types of support at the right time, in the right way for them, so that those battles are much reduced, hopefully eradicated in the future.
Yeah. I thank the Honourable Member for Edisbury for his contributions just then, but also with your speech, and I love the Shaking Stevens stories, but I defer to your expertise as previous Children's Minister, but this is why this bill is just doing so much good. I mean, even the fact that we're having this long debate today with so many colleagues is incredibly moving, and I'm pleased actually almost to see that the Minister is equally as moved as I, so it's not just me with the tissues on the benches. But I do want to say that these problems have been over multiple governments, so parties of all political colours should hang our heads, but also want to see improvements. And we all know from our surgeries and our inboxes that parents that have to come to see MPs when they have disabled children, they're often completely exhausted. They're exhausted by these fights to get things for the children that they know that they should already have, or that they see other children have, but they also know they have no choice but to continue fighting. And that exhaustion is something that I know MPs of all political colours will try and help, but we've got to get better at getting the legislation and the policy right so they don't get to that stage. Now, I also know that the government is trying really hard to make improvements to the to legislation and to the system and to practicalities for people with disabilities. The Minister for Disability is absolutely excellent, and I have real confidence in her ability and her commitment to secure change. And as part of my kind of small role in trying to push through those changes, I sit on the Department for Work and Pensions Select Committee, and we've been doing an inquiry into things like PIP, so Personal Improvement Programs. So during the inquiry, we actually heard from incredible, excellent representatives from the Down Syndrome Association. She explained, so just a few examples of things that we can change that directly impact people with Down syndrome. She explained that it's usually parents who are making welfare and disability applications. Now, we have heard today from a number of people that thankfully, those with Down syndrome are living much longer. It is no longer a 30-year life expectancy, it's 60 years. So that means that their parents are also significantly older. We have to bear this in mind with this constant drive for digital-only application, which is welcome in many respects, and it will also be a record, so hopefully you won't have this constant losing of paperwork that many families have to deal with. But there are many elderly families and elderly parents that cannot cope with that, and we have to build that into our systems. Separately, there's a new in-person assessment approach to PIP, and that can throw up some really interesting results, unintended in some cases, where a family could sit down previously and do a written submission about what they needed and what they wanted changed in their PIP, but actually doing the in-person is very reliant on the person with Down syndrome. And my nephew's Reese, his favourite word is yes, because he gets a really positive response from the word yes. So if you say to him, do you play for Reading Royals, he will say yes. Do you run for a bus? Yes. And the one my sister said, she said she was nearly jumping up and down. It was something like, do you have your own sort of life partner or girlfriend? And he was going, oh yes, oh yes. No, he doesn't. So, you know, we have to bear this in mind when we're creating these policies and programmes, because it won't always work for everybody. So I welcome all the focus and learning about people with Down syndrome today. I am still learning. I think we've all got to still learn from people with Down syndrome and listen. I will do.
I thank the Honourable Lady. I've just been interrupted by a text message. I hope Madam Deputy Speaker will forgive me. Maybe she will, given the circumstances. It's from my constituent Matt Barney, who's also a very hard-working councillor in Eastleigh and Ruddington. And he has told me that his cousin, Heidi Carter, is actually with us today in the public gallery. There she is. She herself has Down syndrome, and she campaigns to reduce the age limit for which abortion is permitted for babies with Down syndrome. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank her for all her work and to welcome her here today.
Thank you for that intervention. I'm absolutely thrilled. I've seen you listening intently, so it's wonderful to have you here today. But you know, I'm just drawing to a close. But I do believe that we must all learn from people with Down syndrome. We will genuinely be a better society for doing so. I commend the Honourable Member for North Somerset. I also want to thank charities like the Down Syndrome Association. There's loads of charities that I should have had a big list of, and I apologise not to. I love the Down syndrome swimming Twitter and Instagram. I enjoy following them, and I thank the government for listening and taking action. And I look forward to seeing the passage of this bill to Royal Assent. Thank you.
Joe Gideon.
Thank you.